joining us in the implementation and scaling solutions discussion. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day and had lunch. And I know we're just coming back from all of the research, and now we're going to pair that with some on-the-ground real expertise. And so we're super excited to have this amazing panel, and we have an amazing moderator too. Edgar is going to be our moderator today, and I'm going to do some, but I have to read the, he has so many good things to say, but I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So this is Edgar Palacios. Edgar is the founder of the LatinX Education Collaborative and RevEd, or
Revolución Educativa.
Advocating for Latino representation in education. He has a variety of experience into this. He holds an MBA from Rockhurst University and a Bachelor of Music from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Edgar has served in many leadership roles, including president of Young Latino Professionals of Greater Kansas City. He's also a certified executive coach, specializing in career transitions and personal growth. And he has earned awards such as the 2023 Urban Hero Award. And most importantly, he is a member of our new family and caregiver advisory group that advises us on how to make sure that all of the tools and materials that we produce serve the needs of families and caregivers. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for moderating the panel.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for the invitation. I appreciate it. As Kathy mentioned, I'm Edgar Palacios. There's so much that I want to say right at the front, but the reason I care about this work, and I'll share a little bit about our organization, we are really thinking critically about how do we actually improve the educational outcomes and experiences of Latino youth in our community. And it's important because Latino students are the fastest growing student demographic in this country, not just in Kansas City, but all over the country. And we're trying to ensure that they actually have access to quality education, but also quality opportunities and quality supplemental instruction and whatnot. I would be remiss also if I didn't honor a colleague and partner in this work, which is Tracie Moreno, who is our Chief Advocacy and Community Impact Officer at Revolución Educativa, RevEd. And she helps guide our advocacy thinking, our strategies. And something that we've talked a lot about is the importance of high dosage tutoring and how do we actually make that accessible within our community. So that's why I'm excited to be here. That's why I'm excited to join FACT. And we have an incredible group of people today. They're going to talk a little bit about implementation and the solutions and workarounds that they've done in order to make sure that students across the country are benefiting from these types of programs. And so with that, I'm going to start with you if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Ashley Bencan with the New Jersey Tutoring Corps. We are now a standalone nonprofit. We've been operating since 2022. As you can see up here, we actually started as a philanthropic initiative in a university and in 2021. And if any of you have ever tried to build something agile within a higher ed institution, you know why we left. Amicably, we serve K-8 in ELA and math and high impact tutoring. This past year, we have worked in 32 different school districts across the state of New Jersey, have served about 2,000 scholars. And by and large, someone asked me earlier, like, how many people have you been able to reach? And I said, honestly, it ebbs and flows based on funding. So all the conversations I've heard today, impact us in the same exact way. And we have a shared funding model, right, where it is not 100% in any one category. So, but I'm excited to share more about that with you.
Thank you.
I'm Grace Bailey. I'm the Director of Accelerating Scholars in Metro Nashville Public Schools. Accelerating Scholars is the umbrella over all of our high impact tutoring programs in the district. We started with a small pilot in the spring of 2021 when students were returning to in-person learning after the pandemic, and really launched tutoring that fall. Since then, we've grown from serving 850 students to 10,000 in our largest semester last spring. We have a very hybrid portfolio of tutor sources with our own staff working as tutors, staff members that are hired specifically to be tutors, community partners, volunteers, and various providers and partners that we've picked up along the way as we try to really figure out what works best and what's going to give us the greatest return on investment for our students.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is LaToya Blackshear, and I serve as the Director of Planning and Evaluation at Jackson Public Schools, where we serve a little over 17,000 students, or have enrolled 17,000 students in grades K to 12. But in 2023, we launched our very first ever high impact tutoring program. We're very excited about that. In partnership with the center at OBC at the Southern Education and Foundation, and launched our very first outcomes-based contract in the meantime as well. And so in 2023, we serviced around about 736 students in middle school mathematics in grades 6 through 8. Oh, and what a journey it was. More to come.
And my name is Tracie Bergman. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction in Hillsborough County, Florida. We are the 7th largest district in the nation, so we are big. And this year we followed in Jackson Public Schools footsteps with our first outcomes-based contract. We actually have 2 of them. One is EdTech and one is high dosage tutoring. So we were fortunate enough to partner with a provider and have been working alongside them in 14 sites with kindergarten and first grade, focusing on early literacy.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here and for sharing your wisdom with our community here that's present. Grace, I'm going to start with you. So I actually just flew in from Nashville, and boy, are my arms tired. Okay. You can boo that. You can boo that. It's totally fine. Nashville happens to be one of the fastest improving districts since the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit more about how high dosage tutoring, your programs there have made that a possibility, but also, I think there's also been some challenges around the data that the district is reporting on.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know how many people were in the last research lightning round, but I think Monica queued this up perfectly. She was sharing some research and really underscoring the point that we just need so much more and need to continue refining and learning more. I think that's kind of been our stance in MNPS. We started small. We started with our homegrown, our staff tutoring our students, our community volunteers working with our students. We saw that we wouldn't get to the scale that we wanted to serve and needed to source more tutors from different providers, from really any source that could meet our model and our requirements. I'm looking at multiple providers in the room that we work with now. And I think, our team and our program manager, Courtney, is in the room. Our team could attest that we've never delivered the same program 2 semesters in a row. And so I think, we did have an ongoing research partnership with Annenberg and Brown University to study our first 3 years of tutoring. And the results weren't what we would want to, post and write home about. But I don't think we ever viewed that as a summative assessment. That's a snapshot. By the time that data came out, we were another year removed, continuing to improve, continuing to iterate on what we learned from that study. And in really key areas like really pushing the dosage, making sure that kids were getting that full year of tutoring rather than just a semester, making sure that we were training our tutors and giving them the support that they needed. And so I think now we're 2 years removed from that study, and it's all very helpful information, but we continue to see that growth as a district, see, top score in our state's value-added assessment system. And so we know that tutoring is one of those strategies that's helping move our students forward. And we're just looking forward to continuing to refine and see that data continue to change over time.
I really appreciate you naming that no 2 semesters has been alike. How many of you feel good about that? How many of you feel hearing that? I'm curious, how important is adaptability and flexibility in the success of these programs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tremendously important. Like, it's exhausting, and that's not what everyone wants to hear. But like, continually thinking like, okay, we just finished this yesterday. How are we going to do it better tomorrow? Is the hard work that needs to be done with tutoring and most things in education. I think, we've been really thoughtful about how we pick up different providers who we partner with. What are our non-negotiables? Where do we pursue a new opportunity? And does that fit with the district's goals? And I think, in some ways we've maybe considered doing things that we wouldn't have thought of on our own, or we've brought in partners that we wouldn't have initially, thought about. But so I think that's kind of some of the flexibility. We have given our schools some flexibility to decide, like, within the menu of options that we have, how will you tutor your students? So I think, just being willing to continually focus on improvement and not say like, yeah, we did it this way last semester, has been really important for us.
So thank you for that. LaToya, you did a very intentional, very data-driven project, was successful. What lessons have you learned since then, and how are you implementing those lessons in the work?
Oh, so we definitely learned a lot from our implementation. I want to first start by saying we took a slightly different approach to high impact tutoring. Rather than solely focusing on students in the lowest percentile, we broaden our reach. More often than none, you see where we focus on the lowest percentile. Well, in Jackson Public School, with our data, it showed that we had an increasing number of scholars approaching proficiency. Yet too many were still below that threshold. And so we said, okay, how can we ensure, because one of our mottos is everybody deserves a coach. So even from the students, the teachers, everybody has a coach. And so we wanted to ensure that we reach those students that were near proficient. Throughout our program, we leveraged a lot of data throughout the program, from who would our targeted population be, what subjects, what grade level, what standards will be the focus of high impact tutoring as well. And throughout that, with the ongoing use of our data, we made a lot of adjustments, much needed adjustments, and just saw a lot of growth, and it strengthened our partnership with the way we collaborated with our providers. And I go back to kind of saying, if you think about Oprah Winfrey, right? Everybody has seen Oprah Winfrey, right? And you seen when she gives out all of the prizes and everything, right? And that's what it was. In Jackson Public School, we were like, you get a tutor, everybody gets a tutor. We realized that the data didn't support that. And so in partnering with, outcomes-based contracting, it helped us to, narrow our focus and really determine and front load our expectations with our providers. So doing that has really changed increased our student outcomes. So we were excited about the progress that we were making.
I'm curious about that data. When you're thinking about collecting that data and presenting it out, who are the key audiences that you're using that data to tell the story that you want? And
so we would always prepare the data. Luckily, with our regular meeting cadence that was established, we met with our providers. So prior to meeting with our providers first, we met at the district level and kind of level set and validated the data each time. And then we would have conversations with our assistant superintendents, our superintendents, our teachers, and our students as well, because they have to have ownership of that data. And as soon as we ensured that they had ownership of the data, then we saw an increase in the outcomes that we were looking for. And so we started small and then started, adding on all of our stakeholders. And again, it changed the trajectory of what we saw, because again, we were focused on those hardest to move students. And to end up with well over about 40% of them being proficient out of the tutoring. And get this now, our tutoring only lasts 7 weeks, despite that last great research of 10 weeks plus. It was 7 weeks because we had a lot of technology concerns, but using that data just helped us to modify it because, you know, as we're talking about and presenting the data, we presented data on student and teacher attendance, the mastery of the standards, and that was important to us. And then tutor match rate was also huge for us because it's social emotional. We wanted to ensure that you had the same, or the student received the same tutor each time. And so we really leverage a lot of our data and then presenting it to our SUPs and then actually coming back, presenting it to our board. They were excited about it as well, seeing our achievement kind of take a turn for the good.
I'll ask you a question later about like how that data was utilized to engage parents in their support of programs. I assume that it was there, but I'm supposed to ask that as a member of fact. So, Tracie, we've heard a little bit about providers and partnerships and the strength of partnerships that allow these programs to be successful. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences with providers and what makes those partnerships strong?
Yeah, sure. So we currently work with 2 providers specifically. Like I said, one is more of an ed tech, crosses sort of into tutoring-ish, and one is definitely high impact tutoring. And one of the things that we learned very early on is that to really implement strong, you're going to have to learn to spend a lot of time with the person. You know, there's weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings, data shares, conversations about sites, conversations about kids, teachers, etc., depending where they are, in order to get that buy-in. We also learned that it's important for our providers to really understand our district. Every district's unique. Hillsborough is its own little world in its own, but you know, everybody has that. But our providers have to understand that uniqueness, not just demographically speaking, but also the inner workings of our schools, the principals, the coaches, and how all of that works in order to integrate themselves as that part. But what we learned through our outcomes-based contract journey was really that importance of mutual accountability. And when you enter into a contract, whether it's an outcomes-based contract, or I would beg to say no matter what contract you're in, because I've used the language even with other vendors that, you know, are not tutors and are not outcomes-based, that, you know, there are set expectations on both sides that need to happen that we need to live up to. And that's part of that partnership. And it's also that partnership piece of being able to have hard conversations when things aren't quite working up to snuff, or being able to celebrate together when they are working up to snuff. So I think it's that combination we really built that relationship.
I'm curious, for providers who are interested in expanding their reach, what do you think is needed from the get-go from a provider in order to like successfully move a contract forward?
So for us, and again, you know, learning is half the battle as we move into our, you know, moving into next year and kind of taking what we learned. There are some pieces of the implementation that are just non-negotiables for us. One of the things I learned with one of our providers is that when you live in a different state, not Florida, and I have implementation issues with the technology and you can't get here to help me and I don't know a thing about your program, that's a problem for me. So local level support, we're fortunate that our high impact tutor lives in Hillsborough County and has been there forever. So that one works out really well, but we've had issues with the other. It's also the fact that when we meet, it's not my job to pull the data. I'll work with the data I have. But what data are you going to show me to show the effectiveness? Where is that fidelity data coming from you? Where is the usage data coming? Where is the attendance data? And all of that coming from you, it's not acceptable for you not to come to a meeting with that ready to discuss it so that we can problem solve together. I think for us, it's also about building in, like I said, project management. We were fortunate with our high impact tutor to have that project manager boots on the ground when sites aren't responding, which sometimes they don't. Like, here, let's give a nudge. Let's have that contact person as far as that goes. But I think in terms of implementation, I think what has happened as we've continued to work with providers is that we've set our expectations higher than what they were to start. And with that, now we have our non-negotiables as saying, if you're going to work in Hillsborough County, these are some of the things we expect from you.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarity. That's powerful right there.
It's tough. Yeah, I got a little too tough at the beginning. And the team was like, whoa, Tracie just let loose. Sorry.
I love the energy and the wisdom that's being demonstrated here. We're talking about scaling as well, and so Ashley, your program has modeled really a really interesting way of scaling some of the tutoring programs. Can you talk a little bit about more of your experience in New Jersey, what that looks like, and the different ways that you've gone about it?
Sure. So in New Jersey, we were excited to kind of add apprenticeship to the delivery option of what we do. So I put flyers out because this is complicated and I'm not going to answer all of your questions right this minute. And happy to, 100%. But the reason we decided to first work with the Federal Department of Labor to get the tutor occupation approved was by witness of everyone in this room and the fact that this conference goes on every single year, the tutor person as a key role in the education workforce is undeniable. There is no large standing kind of strategy or design to make that career supported. It's very ad hoc, right? And it always kind of was, and now schools are embedding us in their schools, which is wonderful. So because the Department of Labor added that occupation, now New Jersey Tutoring Corps was already an approved apprenticeship program. We can run a tutor apprenticeship program. And so what that does for our program as far as scaling was, one, we believe in a dual ROI for our districts, right? Tracie was talking about how important that implementation is. Couldn't agree more. Also, if we're going to spend a ton of time coaching, training individuals to work with your teachers, with your students, potentially with families, and then somehow be able to navigate school climate and cultures. I don't know a novice teacher that does that very well, but we're going to train tutors to do that exceptionally well and be on a contract, right? Those are a lot of things, and that's a lot of investment. All of those skills and competencies that we're doing and building with that person are stepping stones for them to be a very successful teacher. So that's that double ROI. If we're going to do this, let's make it work for kids now, and you're preparing that pipeline, within your building and your school. The second was we want to diversify funding, right? On a personal level, I've been just more kind of frustrated that education does not get the same equal spotlight when whether it be at the state level or at the federal level, as far as a workforce that deserves investment. And so when you look at workforce language that's around the country or even within your own state, largely the education sector gets excluded. So the fact that we can bring this in as an apprenticeship, now that means we can go and apply to those workforce dollars, which is really important now with the current kind of state of the world. And last but not least, this is bipartisan apple pie work, right? And if we can convince people that investing in tutor development is good for kids because kids grow up to be functioning, voting, contributing citizens, this should be easy to help people understand why it matters and why you should invest in it. So that was kind of the theory.
Yeah.
We're gonna we'll keep working on it.
I'm so curious about the pipeline. Are you seeing, are there any stories that you have around tutors who have become exceptional teachers?
Yes, sadly, and that, creates challenges with our district partners who are this person just left, we love them. I'm like, yeah, they got a full-time teaching job, right? So every year, every cycle, we have at least 5 or 6 people that got to get cherry picked, which is exciting. But I think the apprenticeship program is being more intentional about it. So we've had to work hard with our university partner to kind of crosswalk each of their programs that are going to be offered to our apprentices so that, as this tutor is working in their building part-time, they're enrolled learning part-time as well, getting instructional coaching from New Jersey Tutoring Corps, also getting fellowship and ongoing support and stipend and a ton of financial benefits. This is hopefully the easiest way that you can kind of make those next steps for your career.
Appreciate that. Tracie, we'll go over here. And this is going to be a question for all of you. So if you were to start over completely, what is the one thing that you wish you knew, or the one piece of information that would allow you to be successful again?
I would say the importance of buy-in and commitment from where the providers go. I would think that one of the things we were so excited to get the commitment that, sure, I'll welcome the tutoring in, I'll do that. I don't think we did as good of a job as we could have with the communication piece, making sure that our site-based, the pipeline down the pike, right? Do the principals really understand what high impact tutoring is? Do they understand the commitment of what it means to allow a tutor into a building? Where specifically should that tutor work? Those kinds of more of the specific details to get them down and get them started. I think I would definitely do differently next year in terms of the commitment, in terms of setting up initial meetings and really getting more of that onboarding piece before we actually launched and started on both sides.
So, yeah.
And I would venture to say what we would definitely do different is engage and communicate to all stakeholders at the beginning. We sent out, we informed our teachers of high impact tutoring, had a nice training for them, met with our principals prior to, had a nice training. They did wonderful. We sent out a letter to the parents like they had won the high impact tutoring lottery. I mean, they were excited. My baby, oh my gosh. So they were excited. But what we didn't do was have the most important conversation, and that's with the students. Because what our data showed us is that when we looked at attendance, when we looked at our standards mastery report, they were absent. They didn't master the standard, because if you're absent, you're not going to master it. Am I correct in that? That's why I was like, wow, okay. But when I found and said, hey, you didn't come to tutoring today. Well, I got this just for you. You have to talk to them like, you're on their level. And they were like, no, that's for them. I know what I'm doing. And then when we said, because they are under the impression that it's for the slower kids or, something like that. And then what we had to remind them is like, no, you are 1 to 2 standards away from being proficient. Even if this was a student in the lowest percentile, we didn't communicate with them as the reason why you are involved in this tutoring process. And when they saw that we saw you, we think you special enough that we created this program just for you. And it took us about 3 weeks to realize, y'all, I'm telling you, that's when we really saw a shift in the mindset of our students, and our teachers became excited, because all of the high impact tutoring and all that, to me, it's just a mind shift, getting your mind set up and ready for it. And once we educated the students, they were all in. They were ready for their pride. They were, hey, we got tutoring today. And then they ended up using that because we use a lot of surveys from NSSA out there. So any surveys, please make sure we leverage those. And the students just told us, we didn't know why we were here, the purpose of it. And so we thought that was very important. And that's when we saw the transfer of how important it is to participate this. And then, lastly, really not least, was the fact that spoke volume is after they really got involved in it, we then saw them going in and sharing with their peers and supporting and helping them. And so I just, that's the one thing moving into our next pilot. We're going to educate everyone again, but make sure the students are the first.
I really love that. I appreciate you. I want to go to Jacksonville. Great.
I mean, just so many things, but I will try to pick like the one that I think is kind of at the root of like, where we want to go, what we want to kind of perfect next to really make our program like sustainable and as impactful as it can be is setting up tutoring as a really truly like integrated academic support. So when schools are starting, you're doing screening or you're looking at data from last year, you're talking about MTSS, all of our students K through 8 have a built-in intervention time where tutoring takes place or tiered interventions take place. That like the conversation is like, all right, is it tier 1 instruction and reinforcement of that? Is it tutoring? Is it tier 2? Is it tier 3? And that tutoring is like a baked in part of that conversation. I think, we've really started to try to make that shift, but when something is set up as pandemic response and like even just the word tutoring, like it has always kind of meant this ad hoc, like on demand help and getting to a point where everyone understands like that's not what this is. This is not show up when you need help with this particular thing you're working on in math right now. This is show up every 2 to 3 days a week for the whole entire year with the same tutor. For our tutors, like this is no longer like show up at the school and see if there's a kid they want you to read with. This is like meet LaToya every Tuesday and Thursday and Friday and sit down with her. And I think we've really tried to, we've revamped some of our tutor training to really bring that in and say like, okay, this is what we're talking about when we say high impact tutoring. This is what we're talking about when we say this is learning acceleration, not remediation. And we know that learning acceleration works, and that's what we're focused on. And just all of those pieces that we kind of started to refine along the way, but are still working to get, to the ideal world where like, this is just what we talk about when we talk about our normal academic supports during the school day.
Thank you. Ashley.
I would connect with LaToya's response. I think for us, engaging more with families and caregivers, once we shifted to be more district focused and less community-based organization, we relied on our district partner as like they're going to be this communicator to parents about why a student was selected, what they're getting and receiving. And as I even like reflect on today, I think the moment right now around the need for funding and how important all of this work is, I want 1,000+ family listserv behind me that can go blast, the governor and be like, let me remind you that these are all the things that were working when you invested, they did 52 million in 23-24 and are about to release 7.5 now, which is wonderful, but those are drastically different numbers. And in many places there are no investments coming from the state level, right? So I think it is making sure they are kind of a part of the communication so they understand the value and how it's a complement, right, to what their child's receiving at school by and large, and we need their voices.
I appreciate that. And actually,
oh yeah, of course.
thank you. We have a little bit of time, so I'm going to take the privilege to ask this question. We have a room full of advocates, if not future advocates, around this work. From your perspective, what is one thing that you would like the community to reinforce about your programs? And I will let you all decide who goes first.
Oh, I'm happy to go. I'm going to beat a dead horse. It's a workforce initiative. We're developing people that can access more careers, and how important that all of that investment can both help kids right now and upskill all of these tutors into whatever career and education they want. So I think that's what I want us to take away today, that when we message things, when we talk about it, it's not just about students anymore. It's also about career opportunities for, those tutors.
I'll go, whatever. I think for us, the one thing I would say, when we're thinking about family and community, is trying to really make connections between the work that's happening in the core with the teacher, the work that's happening with the tutor, and then also what's going on around. This year, our district not only went with high impact tutoring, but we also went with take-home books. We went with family engagement activities that linked all of the things back to our core instructional materials. We do take-home packets for our core foundational skills piece that go home every quarter, as well as we have a piece that goes home every week. We bought little kits for all the kids. And again, we're big, so you're talking, 15,000 at each grade level. So that's 45,000 kits that we send home and a whole lot of books. So I think for us, it's about, making sure that the community sees that the efforts are truly a wraparound. It's not just one thing, one tutor event every Tuesday at 10. It's instead, this is the initiative we have to ensure that your kindergarten and first grader are ready to read. and that they're reading, and that we can, not have that stopgate in third grade. And this is part of our district initiative. We've launched Hillsborough Reads district-wide as well to really engage like city managers, mayors, the head of voting, like all kinds of people that do video, that really support our initiative to say, this is it, all hands on deck, and we're holding hands and walking forward to get our kids to read. And this is part of the initiative, and we need your help to do that.
I would definitely ditto. We want the community just to understand that we're about producing good citizens. It's not about a test or anything else. It's about ensuring that they live with a solid foundation, and high impact tutoring is one of our initiatives that we continue to push daily. And again, it's not about just us ensuring that all students are supported. And I think that was one initiative that we really pushed. We wanted to ensure that our students that are in a low percentile had that support, but also our students that are right on the cusp of being proficient, as well as our students that are already proficient in advanced. And so them just knowing that we're there for all students, just not a particular set.
I would echo all of that. And I think just add to build on what Ashley shared, like this is something that is research is showing time and time again that this does work. Like we're seeing the results. Yes. There are multiple different like cost models for tutoring. They are typically expensive. They might be viewed as something extra. I think if we can zoom out though and look at like the opportunity cost of like not doing this and what that means for the cost to students, the cost to families, the cost to our communities, our country, whatever it is, however far you want to take that, it's just really important to make this investment now and make it in early literacy, make it in middle grades math, like, wherever you can, give this support to students because we will all benefit in the long run.
So what I'm hearing you all say is that our children are worth the investment. Is that correct? If you agree, raise your hands. If you disagree, don't raise your hands. We're going to turn it over to the audience now. We have a few minutes for questions. Over here, yes.
I just wanted to make a comment. Grace, it was all I could do to keep from jumping up out of my chair and coming and running up and hugging you. When you said that this is it needs to be part of your core district instructional strategy. That to me is one of the key things as a provider, to be able to not be something that's over here, but to be an integrated component of a district strategy, to have a seat at the table, to make sure that what we are doing is in complete and full alignment with the district direction and vision for instruction and supporting children. So thank you for that.
Yeah, question for Ashley, actually, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
You are.
Despite the fact that apprenticeships in the U.S. Department of Labor have existed for almost 100 years, and education is specifically for educators and tutors now, it's still a very new idea. And we just did a state scan in Texas, and we found only 41% of teacher apprenticeship programs are accessing labor funding, which is shocking because it's isn't the whole point to get labor funding? And you have already charted such a pathway. I'm curious, how have you navigated this other world of labor that's so different from education spaces in some ways? Do you have relationships with local workforce boards, or do you have a champion who you talk to? How did you figure that out?
Great question, Jeff. I did not ask him to ask this. No, we are friends. So I think the first part is navigating the language. So a few people have asked me, what is the difference here, right? Because labor talks in a different language than education does. And my go-to person looked me in the eyes when we were applying to a grant and said, you're being too smart. They don't get what you're saying. You need to dumb it down a little bit. So I apologize if anyone is in here from labor, but that is ultimately the advice I got. And it is what gave me a fresh perspective, which is you can't try to take an apprenticeship workforce program and fit it into education. You need to take your education program and fit it into their workforce initiative. So what that means is labor has already defined what is a good tutor. Education may disagree, it doesn't matter. They defined it, it's their program, they get to set all the rules. Luckily, we had some say when we were working with the Department of Labor about what that means, and it's really the 4 core competencies from Danielson. So everyone in the room can breathe out, it's okay. The competencies are good. But when we talk about in a grant, right, what we're going to use that money for, just spend some time understanding their definition. So the fundamental purpose is that someone is working and someone is learning. When they're working, they're getting paid by their employer. When they're learning, they're going somewhere else to get that learning, and they call that related technical instruction. And so what we are doing is we have a higher ed partner that's providing some of the related technical instruction, even though that's not necessary, just a room of friends, because there's no credentials needed for tutoring. So if anyone can just make sure they are not creating tutor credentials for schools, that would benefit all of us, because we don't need tutors to go through any more hoops. What we do want them to do is go get post-secondary credit that puts them on the track to earn their undergraduate degree or a master's degree or 60 credits so they can become a long-term leave or a paraprofessional, right? There's access points that just getting some of those post-secondary credits are, really transformational. When you are responding to these grants, you're going to get wage reimbursement for having invested in, as the employer, in your apprentices. And that's it. So when we in education kind of rebrand and rephrase and kind of talk things to death, labor does not like that and will just be like, this makes no sense. I don't think you get it. So that is the advice. You have to just kind of very simply, we're going to put people in classrooms that are working in this job. We're going to pay them. They're going to learn in these following ways. And we're going to tell you about it. And that's all they want to know. And then they're like, well, tell me how many people you registered. That they are obsessed with registering someone, which all it means for our data folks is putting them in a database that then you have to do again for your state. So they don't even talk to their own databases, which is a real pain. But so I think that's the key. And then, yes, you need to make best friends with your state, Department of Labor liaison in New Jersey. There is not an intermediary work board. They do whatever the federal government says. So the minute the federal government said tutor is an approved occupation, we were good to go. But I am cell phone friends with Nicole Field with the Department of Labor, who's stationed in New Jersey. And I think that is the best, relationship investment you can make, is just making sure when you are in a weird position, you don't know what's going on, or you just have some simple questions, call them up, because they do. They just want more apprentices. They don't, that's it. That's the driver.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I'm pointing at you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Teamwork over here. I've appreciated the panel so much. The question that I have is that if we think about tutors as a caring adult who provides consistent one-on-one instruction to kids, it strikes me that the parents are the tutors that are hiding in plain sight. And Tracie, I loved hearing about how the at-home packets and the resources that enable parents to play that role. I'm curious to hear from y'all, how you all think about enabling parents to live into their teaching and tutoring potential.
And that's what we have focused this year on, trying to raise our parent engagements. We have provided videos on how to use the resource that are in English and in Spanish. Our resource packets are in English and in Spanish. We have 40% of our population is Hispanic. So that's a big deal in terms of access for us. We've also provided PowerPoint slides for our literacy coaches to be able to turnkey at their own Title I family engagement events. And we've worked closely with our ELL department in terms of delivering the same messaging when they do their PAC meetings and their DAC meetings across our district. We're fortunate in Florida to have the New Worlds Reading Initiative. So our schools are able to sign up directly with them to do their own family engagement. And if kids sign up and they qualify, they get a book a month that comes with packets and things like that. And then we also hosted 5 district wide events where we had about 100 participants at each one. And then we were lucky enough to be the state recipient. So we had over 1,800 families at our site over at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Stadium to also host family engagement and really learn like what does engagement mean, and really how can I as a parent help my kid at home, because sometimes it's not that they don't want to, it's that they don't know how, or literacy wasn't fun for them. So opening up a book to read is not going to be their first choice. But it's been very cool. We have some products also that we have. That's been a #1 focus for us this year.
And I would say our focus as well is that we launched our comprehensive needs survey to see how we could better engage our parents. And they asked for parental classes and everything. So once a month, we host activities for our parents. And we're actually working with them and teaching them how to utilize the computer, how to sit down and read with your child, and all of those things. And they have really stepped up to the plate and being more involved. So we are very appreciative of the supports and grants that we utilize to leverage that. Because at first, our first little parent outing, we didn't have that many to attend. And then we started offering various incentives. You got to get them to come first so you can see what we have to offer. And by doing the incentive, that second month, it was well attended. And it was like, oh, we should have, been trying, because we too gave away, we do summer reading books. And so we gave every parent the book for this summer to read with their students. And then we gave away little supplies, book bags, shoes, so everything, because again, our district is, 100% free or reduced lunch. And so we've been able to leverage a lot of little grants and everything, and have a whole parent and director of family engagement. Her focus is getting and offering support and classes to those. And that's been very, very helpful to the parents.
Awesome. Do we have a brave and or courageous soul that wants to share about what their table talked about?
I think
I'll jump in. I just want to thank you again for elevating the need to talk to our students and sell it to our kids first. We do a great job of principals are excited, our teachers are excited, the parents. I've emailed them a letter. I think they got it. I've never talked to the kids, except on the back end when we're done. Tell me how great it was. Yeah. But I've never informed on the front end, and I need to do a better job.
I add on to that. I was talking to her about framing it that way for students. I had the same feeling, and I was saying the way that Grace talked about just the branding of accelerating scholars, marrying that and saying you are a scholar, we are investing in you. I think it's just so powerful for kids to see themselves that way.
All right.
What's the name of your program?
One more reflection over here.
Over here, we talked a lot about we realized the most important piece when you're talking about high impact tutoring is your student buy-in. And we liked a lot of what you spoke about with Jackson Public Schools about making sure your students are involved in the conversations and realizing that you can plan and implement what you think is a wonderful thing, but if you don't have your students involved, it's totally different. And we also talked about the importance of building those relationships so that they're trusting you with their needs. And they're understanding also their why, what's their purpose for being there, whether they are 2 levels behind or they're behind grade level, period. But they're understanding their why in more of an impactful way, and they're going to give you more of that energy. So that's what we discussed.
I think those are great takeaways. What I'm hearing you all say is if we center the students, we're going to be okay. Oh. Right? Fantastic. Let me give a round of applause for our student panelists.